Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you are safe and well. My name is Alexis Porter, and I am a member of the graduating class of 2021, an economics major at Spelman College. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Courageous Conversations, Black in the C-Suite. The purpose of Courageous Conversations is to inform and inspire. Because of the critical times that we are in, it is important opportunities for connection, engagement, understanding, education, and most important, empowerment of Black women. This morning's conversation will be between the 10th president of Spelman, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, and Ms. Rosalind Brewer, Spelman alumna, class of 1984. I am thrilled about this conversation as a Spelman student and as an executive board member of the Sweet Mu Pi chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, of which Ms. Brewer was initiated in spring 1982. As the Mu Pi chapter commemorates 42 years of sisterhood, scholarship, service during this week of February 8th through the 12th, we pay homage to all the Mu Pi alumni that have come before us. With gratitude, I am ecstatic to be able to extend the celebration of our chapter's unique sisterhood of Alpha Kappa Alpha in Spelman College by introducing this intellectual conversation. Ms. Brewer, as our Spelman sister and soror, we salute and congratulate you on your historic appointment to CEO of Walgreens Boots Alliance Incorporated. As the only Black woman CEO leading a Fortune 500 company, your career as a chemist and a leader at Kimberly-Clark, Walmart, and Starbucks is the epitome of the type of excellence Spelman and Mu Pi represents. Thank you so much for continuing to raise standards and to be an example for all to follow. We thank you, President Campbell, for developing this amazing series and leading these important conversations. We also thank you for extending an invitation to the Mu Pi chapter. President Campbell became the 10th president of Spelman in August of 2015. An art historian and Romare Bearden scholar who recently published a well-received biography on his life, Dr. Campbell spent 10 years as the executive director at the Studio Museum in Harlem and 23 years as the dean of the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University before coming to Spelman. Now, with great pleasure and honor, everyone please join me in a virtual applause to welcome two extraordinary women, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell and Ms. Rosalind Brewer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis. And I must say, congratulations on being a graduating senior. We are so proud of you. And I am so proud that the Office of the President could partner with Sweet Mu Pi of AKA to make this presentation today. So thank you. And thank you for giving us such a wonderful and warm introduction. Well, good morning, everyone. It's really good to be with you this morning, because we have the pleasure of having a conversation with Rosalind Brewer, class of 1984, the newly appointed CEO of Walgreens Boots Alliance, Inc. And she's not only the CEO of Walgreens, but I also want to point out that for the past decade, our Ros Brewer has been the chairman of the board of trustees of Spelman College. Now, I know running a multinational corporation is very challenging, but I'm here to tell you that leading the board of trustees of the #1 HBCU in the country requires a kind of moral clarity and vision that Roz has 10 times over. And I want to say publicly, Roz, thank you so much for your service as our board chair. And congratulations on your new role. You make us Spelman proud. Now, as Alexis said, we're here to have this conversation among friends. And at last count, there are nearly 900 of our friends who are signing in, and they keep signing in as the morning goes by. But we're going to have a candid conversation about what it really means to be Black in the C-suite. What does it mean to be a Black leader and to be a Black leader in this day and age? So I'm going to start my questioning, as I always do, Roz, by asking you something about your childhood. So you're from Detroit, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So what made you decide to choose Spelman College?
So, Mary, first of all, can I start by paying homage to Lexi, our graduating senior, my soror, and I'm trying to represent well today in my hot pink, and let all the sorors know across the country that I'm proud to be a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha as well as a Spelman alum. And it's just always wonderful to come back home and have candid conversations like this, Mary. So thanks for having me. So why Spelman and what led me to my decision? You never know about the people that you meet in your life, but my guidance counselor in high school was a Spelman College graduate. And her name was Dr. Geneva Carter. And she was actually my college counselor as I was applying. And she brought Spelman to my attention because, quite honestly, growing up in Detroit and being in the state of Michigan, there's University of Michigan, there's Michigan State, and, we all just automatically left my wonderful high school, and many of us went to those institutions. And I wanted something different. And Dr. Carter, I think she saw something different in me and really, really showed me the ropes. And at that time, remember, there's no internet. She's pulling out booklets, she's pulling out pictures, she's showing me her girls, right? And I was like, I just have to have some of that. And she helped me apply because at that time, I'm the youngest of 5. Mm-hmm. And my siblings and I are the first generation college educated in our family. My dad is one of 10 children. And so we were blazing trails. And so I needed help to apply. I didn't know what I was doing. And I also knew there was no money for me to go to school. So she helped me on many fronts and she talked me into it. But, it's that alum, it's that lineage, it's that connection that really made me think about Spelman. So I only applied to 2 schools and Spelman being one of them. And when I got in, it was just hands down. I took off and I was ready to go.
Well, we're delighted that you did choose Spelman. Now, when you became a chemistry major. What attracted you to that subject?
Yes, so I went to a technical vocational high school in Detroit, Michigan, Cass Tech High School. And at that school, you had to pick a discipline. So in 9th grade, I started high school in 9th grade. At the time, you could start 9th or 10th grade. I started in 9th grade, and I picked chemistry and biology as my high school concentration. So I had what I would call an early start in the sciences. I always showed a propensity to do well in math. Mm-hmm. And I had stayed on that track through school and had done well in those areas. And then, it was just interesting to me. I thought maybe the medical field, and I wanted to do something I thought that used, what I was, trained to do early on in my early education. So I stayed with the track of chemistry and stayed as a chemistry major at Spelman.
So as you were staying with chemistry as a major, what experiences academically really anchored you in the chemistry major? What were some of the exciting things you encountered over the 4 years?
Sure. So first of all, I had the very unique experience. My summer prior to coming to Spelman College, I interned with a pharmaceutical company. And it's interesting that I'm going back into pharmacy at this time, but I interned at a pharmaceutical company, actually a mentor in Detroit really brought me to that opportunity. And then when I came to Spelman, it was actually the faculty. Mm-hmm. And so Dr. Gladys Bays and Dr. Cornelius, my soror there, really helped me through the sciences, right? And so and I thought I was ready, Mary. I thought I knew everything. And I got there and that organic chemistry kicked my behind. I'll just be honest with you. But if it wasn't for Dr. Gilliard and Dr. Bass, really watching over me and making sure that I had everything I needed to be successful, it made all the difference in the world. And that's one thing that's so unique and beautiful about Spelman is that, they care, they want you to finish and they want you to finish strong. They don't want you to crawl over the finish line. They're just like, no, you're going to blaze right through. And, Dr. Gilliard, at the board with her eyes closed, teaching us, organic formulas, it was amazing. And that really made me think if they're going to take that time with me, I better do what I need to do while I'm here. So it really stuck with me and it's all about the faculty.
That is so wonderful to hear. And you'd be pleased to know, and of course you do know as the board chair, that our faculty still carry with them that spirit of high expectations and will do what you need to do for you to be successful. But that's a wonderful story. Thank you. So your career, you left Spelman and you stayed with your major with chemistry. You went to Kimberly-Clark. Tell us about your early days there, because you really were a chemist in a lab.
That's right. That's right. So I actually, when I finished Spelman, so let me just say, I had the intention of doing the Spelman Georgia Tech dual degree program. Two reasons why I didn't finish that plan. One is, I will tell you, engineering graphics, that's a whole nother beast. I saw some letter grades in those classes that I said, I better rethink this decision. And then second, my father passed away 6 weeks before I graduated from Spelman. And thank goodness, again, the faculty rallied around me, got me through graduation and my final exams, but I knew I had to get out and work, Mary, quite honestly. You know, I knew that the funding, I had pressed every button I could in funding, so I had to work. Kimberly-Clark was growing their R&D facility in Roswell, Georgia, and I went through the career placement office at Spelman. And I interviewed and came on as a research technician, and I really worked in a lab for the first almost 5 years of my career as a bench chemist. And so I was in research and development, and I worked up under Dr. Jose Pasos, who was a research fellow, a brilliant Latino gentleman, Ph.D. scientist, and he took me under his wing, and I learned all I could about polymer science. And I did that for 5 years until I couldn't stand standing in a lab very long. It was so isolated, and I was, you know, I'm chatty Cathy, right? So I'm in the lab, you know, doing my thing, and it's like, okay, this is boring. Like, who's going to talk to me, right? And so, you know, I had to bust out of there, and I had candid conversations with my leadership to say, listen, I think I could do something different or something more here. So they put me on the technical team that was, you know, selling Kimberly-Clark products, and I would give the technical overview and they'd sell the product. And so I just moved on into business roles and eventually went into mergers and acquisitions. And then I just stayed on the business side.
What I love about that story is that you spoke to them about what you wanted for yourself, that you came forward and said, I want to do something different. Now, while you were there, you did attend management school programs at Stanford and Wharton.
I did. So, you know, I had some fantastic mentors at Kimberly-Clark. I really feel like that company raised me. I never saw a reason ever to leave. I stayed there for 22 years. I went from research technician, which is the lowest, you know, job there, to being group president for one of their sectors. And so I was able to, at one point I had, you know, I don't have an MBA, but I needed to understand finance and other areas. And so my mentor and my leadership at that time offered me the opportunity to go to Wharton. So I took a leave of absence from Kimberly-Clark, and I was at Wharton in their advanced management program. And I went there in May, and I think it went all the way through till September, but I gave up my job. Basically, I had to turn all my responsibilities over, and it was fantastic. We were in class from 8 to 10 p.m., 7 days a week, and it was a global program. And I really learned finance and it was amazing. It changed my life. And then later on, when I achieved my first publicly traded board seat as a vice president of Kimberly-Clark, I went to Directors College, which was a combination of University of Chicago Law School and Stanford School of Business. And so those two entities came together, and I learned corporate governance. Mm-hmm. And after that, I mean, things really began to take off after that, because I could see a company from a different view, and it was life-changing.
So in those 22 years, what did you learn about yourself, perhaps that you didn't know when you first started?
Yeah, you know, I actually learned, Mary, that how important it is to be an agile learner, right? Mm-hmm. And that there's unlike college, there's not a set of textbooks sitting there for you to emerge in, and there's not a teacher or a classroom. You're your own mobile classroom every day. And how are you going to get that, new information? So just being curious. And Spelman, one thing I will tell you, this is why I love a liberal arts degree. And this is why my kids, I said, you can go anywhere you want, but it has to be a liberal arts college. And would love for my daughter to be at Spelman, right? And so let me just put that plug in there. So but I will tell you, the critical thinking skills that you gain at Spelman, they stick with you forever. And I think that, Mary, being an agile learner, has done a lot for me. And it's made me, curious about what I don't know and what more I want to learn. And so I have continued to just really seek out new learnings everywhere I go. And I think it has made me marketable, right? Because who would have thought that, a chemist would end up, running large scale retail and those kinds of things. But it has stuck with me over the years.
Yeah, I think that agility is so important. And we stress more and more often here at Spelman the need to consider yourself a lifelong learner. And you're the epitome of that, really. Our students often hear that when they go out into the world, it's important to have a mentor. And a mentor being someone who can speak very candidly to you and to whom you can speak very candidly and will give you advice and insights and all the protocols that are not written down.
Right.
Tell us about how our young people should look for those mentors in their early years when they go off to their first job.
Sure. So, in most mentor-mentee relationships, if you're fortunate enough to be selected as a mentee and someone sees something in you and wants to take it on, those are the best ones because they are deeply ingrained in, your success. And I will tell you that comes from, sometimes being in the right place at the right time, but other times just always doing your best and being your best. And people see that. Great leaders know just how difficult it is to acquire great talent. And when they see raw talent, they reach in and try and get it, right? So let's hope that happens for a lot of our Spelman graduates. But the other side of that is picking the mentor that you see something in that person that you don't have in yourself, right? And that'll stretch you and challenge you. And so many times, some of my mentors didn't look like me. And then sometimes they absolutely did, because I needed to understand, what is it like being a Black female? What happens when your Black self walks in the room and no one looks like you? Or you walk in that room and you get that cold, chilly feeling, or you get it totally ignored, or someone says, can you pass me the coffee? The whole deal, right? I've had it all. So, I have sought out, those individuals and just asked to help me. And I've owned those relationships. I don't put it on them. I own it and say, look, I need to know 1, 2, and 3 about X, Y, and Z. Can you help me? And it's very deliberate and intentional, and it should be.
So you've been very forthcoming with your mentors as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think they've appreciated that, because sometimes they'll want to say, let me talk, I'm going to talk to you about this. And they're like, no, I'm going to make it easy for you. I just need these 2 things, right? Because, you got to be deliberate about these things, and they respect that. They're like, okay, well, then we're just going to go deep on those things, right? And I think, and it's really interesting, Mary, as I've assumed new responsibilities, I always call my mentors just before I'm about to make a change.
Interesting.
I still do. And I'll call them. They'll take the call and say, okay, I'm thinking about X. What do you think? And some have told me you're out of your mind. Some have said run real fast. It's been interesting. I have to balance some of the views, but I never do that. I never forget them or leave them behind, because they always give me some little nugget that I didn't think about. And I'm like, man, I'm never finished, am I? So it's been really wonderful. I'll tell you, it's been great.
So you must be a mentor to many women as well. And one of the questions that we have that's come up from our audience is, what kind of guidance do you give to young Black women who are entering the corporate sector and really have high aspirations? What are some of the pieces of advice that you give out to them?
Sure. So, I always try and tell our young women, especially our women of color, the best thing you can do is spend some quiet time with yourself. first of all, you've got to, shut the lights down sometimes, go in a quiet space and say, do I even like who I am? Because our environments make us change into things that sometimes we don't like, and we don't even see it happening to us, right? Because everyone wants us to assimilate to who they are, into their environment. And after a while, you keep losing a little bit of yourself as you move along your journey. You got to shut the lights off, get in a quiet space and say, do I like who I am? And do I know who I am? And when you get really convicted to who that is, it gets easier for the people to move around you, right? Because you're so convicted to who you are, right? You know when to say no, you know when you're going to challenge yourself, you know when you're out over your skis, all of those things. But if you don't spend that time and just keep taking your own personal inventory, you'll end up getting molded by the environment. And you need to shape yourself, and let other people complement who you are.
That's great advice. We also have a question about sponsorship. Now, sponsorship is different from mentorship in that, the sponsor is the person that takes your flag into the room, right? And waves it for you when you're not in the room.
Exactly.
And so the question is, how do you develop or identify those sponsors?
Yes. Now, one thing I have learned about sponsorship is that sponsors almost always find you. And so I'll give you an example of that. My very first board seat, I joined the board of Molson Coors Brewing at the age of 36 years old as a vice president. Okay. Now, I don't drink beer, still don't to this day. Don't like it. Not my drink of choice. But the CEO of Kimberly-Clark had been on the board of Molson Coors for years, and he did not like their diversity. They had a lack of diversity. So he said, I'm giving up my seat and I am going to put Roz Brewer in my seat. Mary, I didn't even interview. All I know is I showed up and I'm on the board. I didn't even understand how they were going to pay me. I didn't know what I was doing. That's why I went to Directors College, because he literally picked me up and put me in that. And he's a gentleman, his name is Wayne Sanders. And Wayne always, he's tall, white, blue-eyed male, and he always knew what his white privilege was. He taught me about white privilege. He would say to me, he said, the reason why I am CEO, he said, quite honestly, there was another gentleman, a person of color that should have been made CEO, a Latino gentleman. And he said, you know what, but I know why I got this job. And he would always say that to me. And so he plopped me into that role. That's a sponsor, right? So he knew he wanted to make change happen. He saw something in me and he kept saying, don't worry, you'll learn it, right? And lo and behold, I did. And but I also learned it because I knew I had Wayne counting on me and expecting me to do it, right? So I knew I had been given a gift. I'm
so impressed by the fact that having gotten that job, that you quickly, went to Stanford to the Stanford University of Chicago program to really learn what it was to be the director of a public company. Because it's more than a notion.
Oh, it is. It is. Mary, it never feels good, when you get out over your skis and you walk in a room and people are like, okay, she came in the back door, first of all. Who is she? She looks so different. Women don't drink beer. What are we going to do with this person? I was so uncomfortable. I really had to seek something out, but I knew I had to take it upon myself to do that. No one was going to help me at that point.
Well, that's really good advice too. So you were at Kimberly-Clark. It's a great place to work. You're having great success, and you leave and go to Walmart in 2006. By that time, you have a family, and the family's growing, and your work obligations are getting even bigger. How do you begin to think about balancing the family life and the professional life?
Yes. Mary, that question, I've been thinking about that a lot because, my kids my youngest is graduating from high school, but my kids were 3 and 11 years old when I left Kimberly-Clark, which was so safe. I could have worked there and just done half the job, just kind of made it work. But I felt so uncomfortable thinking that, one company, having left Spelman College, do I want to retire from here? And I really didn't. And I thought at the time, it's just time to do something different. And so an executive recruiter came to me, brought me an opportunity, but it was in HR at Walmart. And at the time, Walmart was entangled in quite a few issues. And I knew at that point, I felt like I was being plugged as a diversity play. And I said, nah, not the right job. I had worked too hard to get to P&L management, and I did not want to lose that profit and loss statement business side of the work. So I said no. But they really pushed me for about 6 or 9 months to join, and to the point where they showed up in Atlanta at a restaurant near my house. Don't know how they had the address to my home. But anyway, they really talked me into it. But I had a chance to work for a woman that worked for a woman. And I said, now that kind of feels familiar to me. So I did it. And it was a P&L job to run the stores in the state of Georgia. I could stay in Atlanta. And I joined them in October of 2006. And it was really interesting. I went from a president's role to a vice president's role. So, I mean, that was like, whew. I mean, I took a really downturn, but it was a big P&L, big responsibility. I took it. And then 4 months later, I was elevated back up to senior vice president. So I began to, move my way back up, but I needed to learn a new skill. I knew nothing about retail at all. And so I just had to figure it out.
And so how do you teach yourself that? Coming from one corporate sector to a brand new corporate sector, how do you go about learning that?
Yeah, so I actually took it upon myself to, the position was based in Atlanta, but I knew that, Bentonville was the end all be all. So I actually, for 90 days, moved myself into a hotel in Bentonville, Arkansas, so that I could learn, who is this company? They had all kind of stuff going on. It was crazy. And I really wanted to, you couldn't really get the feel for the culture of the company working in the field-based offices. So I moved myself to a tiny hotel in Bentonville, and for 90 days, I just walked the hall and created my own immersion and learned who that company was. And I think that helped because I began to, develop relationships, and then I moved up in the company after that.
So Roz, we have lots of questions that are coming in, so I'm going to pause and take a look at some of these questions and throw them out to you. The first question is, what advice would you give an almost 50-year-old woman who wants to make a significant career change? Kind of sounds like you.
Yes, exactly, because that's where I am right now. The one thing I would tell you is that the timing is now. You should always feel like today is the day, right? And I've had that in my mind space, that today is the day, so that I act with a certain sense of urgency, right? And the urgency of now says, how ready are you? What is it going to take from a lifestyle change? And where are you going to gain your learnings? And that's what I will, always advise people, is that it's never too late. 50 feels real good to me, right? Because let me tell you, many companies are always looking for the adult in the room. So this whole age thing, I'm for telling Black women, throw it out the window. We age well, right? And so, lots of energy, lots of wisdom. And the other thing I will tell you is never underestimate what your true learnings are, because many times we have been given the job that no one else will do. And Mary, because of that, that's why we're self-taught. That's why we're lifelong learners. We are lifelong learners out of what is not given to us, right? We're lifelong learners for the graduate schools that we're not accepted to, right? And so we're self-taught because, there are other people that are teaching that don't really want us to learn. So don't underestimate what your full capabilities are and what you've acquired in your life. You've got to get with a sheet of paper and write them down. I mean, I'll tell you right now, getting ready for my next opportunity, I'm on my learning journey now. And the things I want to do is, Roz, what did you not do well at Starbucks that you want to do different in your new opportunity? And I'm doing self-evaluation. I'm learning more about the industry. But I'll just say to a 50-year-old woman who wants to make a change, do it now. Read, educate yourself, and then put the plan together. And then use your Spelman resources, because we are a resource pool that I think sometimes is underestimated and underutilized.
I have a couple of questions from our students that I want to get to.
Sure.
What advice do you have for students indecisive about their career paths and who have many interests but feel insecure about not necessarily being the best at a subject area or feeling qualified to pursue one particular path?
Right. So, Mary, what I say to early graduates when they're thinking about, what do I do next? It's interesting that this is a journey, right? And no, in the beginning like that, no job is too little or too awkward or too different. At least get on the path of your passions, right? And it might not be the ultimate job. It might not be the one job, right? But it's the opportunity. The first role out of college, quite honestly, is just to learn the discipline of working.
Mm.
It doesn't, get yourself up every day. How do you manage your life? How do you learn? How do you interact with people? What's your personal culture compared to the company culture? It's really a lot more simple than what I think, a lot of hesitancy. Your first job is never a bad job, because if you learn from it, then the next one gets better and the next one gets better. I say take the job, right? Go to a city that you love. Don't overthink it. Try and live, through that job and learn through that job and know that there's more behind it.
So the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion is on everybody's mind these days. And it's a topic that you have navigated in your various leadership positions. If you were talking to other CEOs about the topic, what advice would you give them on that particular topic? I saw a terrific TED talk that you gave that I just thought was the perfect lesson plan for anybody who's in a leadership role.
Yes. So, I receive so many calls from fellow CEOs that don't look like myself during the time of the George Floyd murder, and the constant images that, individuals saw constantly around this. And, my message to people trying to find what's my role is to first, you actually really, really need to be, to think through your own self and say, what is my role? How can I make change happen? Because you definitely have the ability to do that in that position, right? But you have to be very, very altruistic about it, because, I've seen a lot of companies throwing money in different places and trying to make a difference. But really what this is about is trying to think through the shoes of people who look different than you are, and set diversity aside, because diversity sometimes makes us focus on numbers. But inclusion means, are you really creating an environment around your personal self and around your company that makes people feel warm and welcomed as whoever they are, if they look different than you? And really check yourself and really think about that as a leader, and what do you want to be known for? And as I got those calls, some people got frustrated with the number of calls coming into the Black executive community. I took each and every one of them, because I said, you know what, this is a time to educate and learn. I got a lot to say on this topic, and I'm so glad you called. And so I take those calls, Mary, and you take them to school for a minute. And there, in every case, they'll say, Roz, I never knew that. I never knew that. And then I'd share some examples. If they ever made me feel uncomfortable, I'd tell them. I said, you know what? Here's some of the things I hear you saying sometimes. And I want you to stop it, right? And I want you to know how it makes people feel. So I took those opportunities to really help create conversations that matter, that really stuck in the guts of people, so that they make different decisions in the future.
So the message here is that, you not only have a lot to learn as you're going through your career, but over time you begin to have something to teach others. Yeah. And I think that when you begin to understand that what you bring to the table is every bit as valuable as anybody else in the room, I think that's a really important moment.
It is.
So I have a couple more questions, actually several questions. As a STEM major who wants to practice, but also own a business, we have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs at Spelman College. What was it like to transfer from the lab to the administrative side of the business, and which do you prefer?
Sure. So, first of all, Mary, I'm really excited about the number of young Black women who want to be entrepreneurs. That's very exciting because those small companies become big companies, and that's to me is just fascinating. But for me, what I like is I'm going to say a little bit of both because as a chemist, as someone in the STEM sciences and math, you never lose the ability to be a curious thinker and to be a constant innovator. And I am telling you, every time I get in a situation, I have been required to innovate and make change happen. And I fall immediately back to all of my analytical skills and everything that I learned being a scientist. And then I've moved them forward and combined them with my business and administrative abilities, and the administrative abilities. Right now, I think, leadership is looking for those folks who not only have the innovation ideas, but that can execute.
Mhm.
And my background in manufacturing and operations gives me a blend of both. So, there's many CEOs and leaders who sit on a, sort of a high throne and can, point fingers and create a plan. But I really think my secret sauce has been able to create the plan, draw the roadmap for the team, and then hold people accountable on execution. And because I know what it takes to execute. Remember, I got all the little, dirty jobs that had to be done. So I had to execute for a lot of my life. So I bring that to bear. And so I would say that it is a blend of both, and both are absolutely needed.
So we're getting a lot of questions about, and again, from students about early career, Black women who go into spaces and they're the only one.
Yes.
They show up for work, they're the only one. They walk into a meeting, they're the only one. They go to a conference, they're maybe two or three.
Mhm.
And the question is, how do you really make that contribution? How do you bring your whole self to the table? How do you, give voice to your ability to teach as well as learn?
Yes. So, let me say I was that person. I would sit in the back of the room. I would think I knew the answer. And then someone else would say what I was thinking. And then I'd say, darn, I knew that was it. Why didn't I just say it? Right. And I mean, really, Mary, for probably the first 3 to 4 years of my career, I was that silent person. First of all, I felt like no one cared. Right. No one cared to hear my voice. You're just here. Right. So then I didn't have the confidence. My self-esteem was like this low. But then I got angry because every time someone else said something that I knew was right and they said it, I'd walk out of there pissed off. And so I just kept saying to myself, I'm just like mad, but I was mad at myself, right? Because the environment is the environment, right? I knew I couldn't change the environment, but I knew I could change myself. So I just started blurting out stuff. And sometimes I was wrong because after a while I would notice I'd say something and someone else would repeat what I said, and they just said it so eloquently, I will say. And I was like, well, if I weren't so pissed off, I would have said it better. So then I tried to bring my anger down. Really, I had to play with my emotion and say, emotion out, facts up. I would say that to myself. Okay, stop being pissed off. Tell them what you think you know, right? And I just kept doing that. The other thing is I would always go into a meeting probably over prepared. Everybody else would get sleep the night before. I'd come in there with red eyes because I was like loaded for bear. But but I'll tell you, it didn't take long though. If you use that wonderful voice that we've been given, especially as being a graduate of Spelman College, if you use that voice, people will listen. They will absolutely listen, especially speaking with conviction helps. And people will at least say, well, at least they know it's hard for you. They know it. They absolutely know it. And some of them know that they're intentionally blocking you out. But if you have the nerve and the self-esteem to speak out, it works over a period of time and you get your self-confidence is building like you wouldn't even imagine. So it's about being prepared. It's about taking the emotion out and putting the facts forward, and just using and training your voice in meetings and public settings and asking, can I take this topic, but I will tell you, I feel that, I feel it. I mean, I know I feel it all the time. I don't much anymore, right? But in the early beginnings, Mary, that was me.
Yeah, yeah. But I love that emotions down, facts forward. That's great. That is really great advice. So we're getting a lot of questions back to this topic of self-care. And you talked about, spending time with yourself in that quiet time. But as I've come to know you, Roz, over the past almost 6 years. Well, yeah, now it's been about 6 years.
Yes.
I've noticed that you're anchored in your family, your friends, your sorority sisters, your school, your alma mater. What role do all those things play in your sense of self-care?
Yes. So I know when and where I feel my best, right? And I have gotten very clear about who I want in my circle. You know what I mean? And it's not so much that I'm exclusionary, but some people tend to lift you up and some people you just want to be around. So one thing, Mary, it's about making decisions, right? About where you feel best. And I've decided my family is first and foremost in that. I have a very close knit, the four of us, very, very close knit, and I'll do anything to sacrifice and put them first. And some of the things I do is, as one could imagine, I probably get invitations to some of the most wonderful events, that I would love to attend. And I say no, because it's nothing like being home on a Friday evening with the family, right? So I've given up a little bit of that to spend the time where it matters most to me. Also, too, I am a very introspective person, right? I know when I feel good about me, I can help other people around me feel good as well. And so I'm usually that person in the room, always lifting up. My best friends, my 17-year-old daughter is named after my friend from 5 years old, who we are still good friends with. And we went to elementary, junior high, high school, and Spelman College together. And so my daughter is Elizabeth, and my very dear good friend is Elizabeth Campbell. She was a graduate with me at Spelman. And so, I have just admired the friends that have taken my calls in the middle of the night, and I have just kept those circles with me.
Well, it's wonderful to see, because you always come to us as the chairman of the board with so much joy. We know this is a huge job, but you always enter the room with so much joy, and we deeply appreciate it.
Thank you.
Roz, what has surprised you most about your career? What is the thing that you never would have guessed would be the direction you would take?
Yeah. I actually never would have guessed that I'd be at this level. I mean, I actually thought, okay, I wanted a house. I wanted the simple things. I wanted a house, and wow, just think if I could have a car. I mean, those things were very important to me because, all I saw around me was hard work ethic. My dad working 3 jobs, my mom working afternoon shift at General Motors. That's all I ever saw. So what I wanted to do is I knew I wanted, I like working hard, but I just wanted simple, I wanted those things around me. So I think it has amazed me where I am right now. But I think also too, what has surprised me most is the number of areas I've had to influence. And as I'm leaving Starbucks right now, I've been doing a series. I've decided that I wanted to touch the people who work for me the hardest during that time frame, and I've been spending one-on-ones with them. I've been doing 8 to 10 a day.
Wow.
Before I leave on the 26th of February. And so I'm whittling down this list, and I just want to make sure that the people who supported me know that I'm still counting on them to do great things. And so for me, I think that's really important to me, right? And it's about the legacy you leave behind. And so I think about that a lot.
Well, you are certainly stepping into your new position at an auspicious time. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. And how does that feel to be coming into a company that is going to be at the heart of our effort to vaccinate our population?
Yes. So let me talk about that a bit, Mary, because this was a hard decision for me. I came into Starbucks as a member of the board of directors, came into the executive committee shortly thereafter, have had a fantastic time and have fallen in love with Starbucks, the company, and the people that work on my team. And there were there was something next for me at Starbucks. That was clear to me, and I have a fantastic relationship with the board there. But as this opportunity came to me at Walgreens Boots Alliance and everything that has happened over the year, it gave me real pause. Mary, it's one of those things as I was doing my research, and I keep this with me and as I continue to research, but let me just share some latest data that's really made me more excited about this opportunity. As we're looking at this vaccine rollout, we're seeing that the disparities continue, right? And disparities in access to healthcare, disparities in quality of healthcare. So let's just take the state of North Carolina alone, okay? So Black people in the state of North Carolina make up 22% of the population and 26% of the healthcare workforce. Wow. So we know already that vaccines are being distributed first to essential workers and those over the age of 65. Now, the healthcare workforce in the state of North Carolina, only 11% of them have been vaccinated so far, okay? White people are they're 68% of the population, and 82% of that population has been vaccinated. Now, if that doesn't make me want to get out and run from coffee to distributing healthcare and community healthcare and reducing disparities, I'm ready. I am up for it like you wouldn't believe. I just hope I don't get put out in the street because I am on a mission. I'm telling you, it's numbers like that I'm waking up to every morning that I cannot wait to get my arms around this next opportunity. And this opportunity is, it's something different for me. It is a chance for me to bring everything I've absolutely learned, believed in, want to be a part of, and these inequities have to change. I hope I can create the most courageous conversations possible between the public sector and the private sector that I possibly can.
So Rod, you know that Spelman has been doing its small part by offering out Milligan parking lot to Morehouse School of Medicine, so they can double the number of vaccinations they can administer. So we're hanging in there with you. But one thing that we did notice, and this happened particularly at the time of Hank Aaron's passing, that there was reluctance in our community to feel as though the vaccine was safe. How can we, and when I say we, not only companies, but educational institutions, help our community understand the safety of taking and the need for taking these vaccinations?
Yes, so that the idea of anti-vaxxers is true in our African American, our Black community. But I will tell you that this disparity in numbers we're seeing is not solely to those anti-vaxxers, to be honest with you. It is around the access to, not making it easy to get to and those kinds of things and understand. So I think there is an education piece in there. And I absolutely think, Mary, when it comes down below the age of 65, we're going to see a higher propensity of people wanting to take the vaccination. But it is going to require some education around it. I still think that people don't understand the risk of getting COVID versus the risk of getting a vaccine. And I think, that's one of the things I'm excited about is to take, quite honestly, I would love to take the Divine Nine. They all have health programs. Every one of these organizations is working on health and wellness, and they can help us get into these communities and educate. And I am absolutely looking forward to that. In my new role is to help on that education piece, because this is a major priority for us to do. This is absolutely impacting our community at too heavy a rate.
Yes. No, that's quite true. And I'm very pleased to say that yesterday I got my second shot. So 14 days. Yes. I'll be good to go. I have several other questions from our students I want to share. What advice would you give to Spelman students who are graduating at a later age? We have PEDS, Pauline E. Drake Scholars.
Yes.
I will be graduating at a later age, and it often makes me feel like I won't have a competitive edge as someone who is graduating at a younger age.
I think we should spend time thinking about that space, right? That space between when, that 22 and when you went back to school, and look for those golden nuggets in those opportunities. And even, there are some wonderful examples of even women who have taken time off to be a mom, right? I mean, rarely are you really just being a mom, right? There's so many other things that are happening. I mean, I know it. I mean, when I get a chance to look at a resume and I see that gap, I'll ask about the gap and I'll ask about, well, what were you doing? And if they tell me, hey, I was responsible for getting the kids to school every day and driving and all of that and interacting with school, that means their priority was family. That's a golden value, especially if it's an African-American woman, right? And so the value of family leadership and owning the responsibilities of a family, don't underestimate that. And I would not talk it down in an interview because it is who you are. One, it shows that you're confident about saying, hey, look, my kids matter to me, right? And so I took the time, right? Or I worked 3 jobs that had flexible hours that maybe don't look glossy, but man, I've got 1, intentionality, 2, I'm disciplined, right? I had 2 jobs while I was taking kids to school. Don't miss those stories. They matter. They really talk about character. And so don't shy away from them because you were learning and you were developing more than you likely realized.
Yes, it's a matter of really understanding what our assets are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. Doing that inventory.
So I have a question from another student who says, when you walk in a room and you are the object of microaggressions, how do you manage those so you don't come off as the angry Black woman with an attitude?
Yeah. That's hard to do because, I mentioned just earlier that I had to watch my emotions and frustrations. That is one of those areas, Mary, that I would really put a caution flag up for our young Black women because we've seen so much, especially this generation. I think about my generation, I never saw anyone murdered on television. This generation has seen so much more. So they bring with them a set of knowledge and experiences that some people don't know how to respect or even relate to. But I do think that when these microaggressions, they are real. We can't overlook them. But that anger raises yet a second flag. And if there's anything you can do to pull the anger out, because anger really does shut down the rest of the room. It can be an environment killer, right? And if there's a way to turn that anger into something positive, into your personal convictions in terms of who you are, and try and bring that down, because sometimes when that anger shows up, it stops people from wanting to relate to you, even if they have the natural propensity to want to be in your company. And more times than not, they just might want to. But if you have that anger first, do whatever you absolutely can to not let that anger and work on that anger. Don't bag it because it will show up. You'll be explosive one day, I can guarantee you. So don't put a bag on it. Try and work through it and not let it show up as much because it does shut down people who want to relate to you, but they see something else when you walk in the room.
So we have a question here from one of our students who wants to know, what's your day like? I mean, do you wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and go to sleep at midnight? I mean, what's a typical Roz Brewer day?
Wow. So let me just say, pre-COVID, I was probably getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. And I went into COVID, and the first, 90 days of COVID, I was flat out. That 4 to 5 hours went to 3 to 4 hours, right? Because it was constantly on. And I was managing, store closures and more than anything, trying to keep every barista at Starbucks healthy, quite honestly. So to be honest with you, a day for me looks like really trying to get good sleep, right? So I try my best to get 6 to 7 hours of sleep. And the second thing that's important to me is morning meditation. And I don't do it during the day, but morning meditation, I cannot flip out of the bed without meditating first. And that gets my head on straight, for sure. And the first thing I do, to be honest with you, is I have to, this is tactical, but I have to eat breakfast. I cannot go without breakfast. And if I have breakfast, That cuts down sugar, everything else for the rest of the day. And if I don't get a chance to work out, I'm okay, I can go. But it's those simple things like that that I know that gets my body charged, because I try to operate off of energy and not off of anxiety. And food and sleep give me great energy, to be honest with you. So that's how my day, and then I'm a news junkie. So I hit the news first, every form of media, so I know what's happening, because I'm likely going to get a call about something, check my numbers from the night before, and then I'm off into my day. And I try and stick to my calendar, and be respectful of my calendar, and just knock that calendar out. And so actually in my day, I usually, I spend a lot of time with my team and my employees, just talking through. I have a lot of one-on-one discussions. I don't like large meetings with my teams. I like one-on-one meetings. I do only one large meeting a week. And then I use Fridays, which I call quick connects. And so Fridays, I do not schedule meetings on Fridays, but I go back and look at my calendar throughout the week, and I send accolades, call people, surprise them and say, it's Roz, what are you doing? Just chat for a while, and then do some planning for the next week. So Fridays are hard days for me, because it's what I'm thinking about. It's when I do the strategic thinking and planning and all of those things. So Friday is my day. It's not a day of rest. I tell people I don't have a 4-day work week. Let me be clear. Friday is important to me.
Well, listening to you, it sounds as though you really have mastered your calendar and your time. And I will tell you, as the president of Spelman, if Roz says that she's going to be on a call at 10:30, you can set your watch by it. I mean, it's a thing of beauty, truly. So that management of time, I think, is really important. So you make sure that you're setting up the boundaries and you do the things you want to do, rather than just what you can find time to do.
Exactly.
So I have just a few more. I'm told we have 5 more minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to try to take a few more questions that are coming in. But one question is, what is the best advice you have ever received from anybody?
Yes. So the best advice, I remember I worked for a really tough gentleman. He was tough as nails, and I always call him the king of the 4-letter word. He advised me to always, and it was kind of interesting coming from him, is to really manage my integrity and make sure that I knew that everything I was doing was likely going to be watched, and always have high integrity, the way you treat people, the way you interact with people, and how you carry yourself. And I never really understood that until I recalled when I was leaving for Spelman College. My mom said to me, she didn't come with me to set, when I was leaving for school, she said, Roz, always be a lady. And I was like, I'm coming to Spelman. They're a little white glove, we got to wear our white dresses and our pearls. What does she mean by that? But, over the years, I put those 2 pieces of sage advice together between my mother, this, beautiful Black woman, and this Caucasian white male that owned the 4-letter word. And they both gave me this sense of why integrity matters and why it's important to carry yourself with both poise and doing the right thing when no one's watching, right? All of those kinds of things just really formulated and stuck with me in terms of who I am as a person and as a human being.
Well, we're delighted they gave you that advice. You have been such an extraordinary presence, not just here at Spelman, and not just for Black women, but for women all over the country and all over the world. I think I mentioned to you, I put up the announcement of your selection as CEO on my LinkedIn page, and now I have about 50,000 hits on that. So, Roz, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so honored to have you as our special guest for Courageous Conversations. You've been very generous with your time. Thanks again to our sponsor, UPS, our student, Alexis Porter, class of 2021. And of course, to the Sweet Mu Pi chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And I love the green and the pink this morning from Roz and Lexi. And to our amazing audience, thank you so much for joining us. I think we've had over 1,000 people in the house with us this morning. So welcome to all of you. Be on the lookout for information for our final conversation this academic year. And until then, be safe, be the light, and keep the faith.